I really want to be less long winded, but I just feel like you gotta have context. You gotta have history, okay? I have thoughts on Essence Fest and all of the conversations happening on social media around it, specifically the conversations between, or the difference in conversation between millennials and Gen X and Gen Z. And I think it really comes down to user education or the lack thereof. Hi, I'm Dr. Jazz, founder, chief strategist, and creative manager at Inclusence. And I have a PhD in basically everything Black women, digital spaces, social media, advertising, influencer marketing, the history of Black women in media and advertising, the whole shebang. Okay. Also, let me give the disclaimer that I've never been to Essence Fest, but I don't think that it has anything to do with what I'm about to say because I think it has a lot more to do about like the general brand strategy and messaging from Essence and much less to do about Essence Fest. Okay. I'm about to give you a little history. Okay. I'm going to use my little PhD for a second, but a little bit of the history, right, of Black people, Black women in advertising. So last year on TikTok, I posted this video talking about the lack of diversity in influencer marketing and how it's directly correlated to the lack of representation in like the corporate spaces of influencer marketing, which is directly correlated to slavery. The first time that a Black person was ever in an ad was a slave ad. Full stop, right? That is our inception into the advertising and marketing space. And there's a quote, I forget the exact, I think it's like Foxworth 1949, something like that. And basically it says that no Negro shall appear in a newspaper or in a magazine except as a slave ad, essentially. Like that's what it's saying. And that is by design, right? And so then at the end of slavery, all these people who worked in advertising and marketing for slave ads, they had to go get a job, right? And then is born the advertising and marketing industry as we know it. And so essentially, those same people who were in charge of controlling, presenting us as slaves in ads are now positioning us in advertising and media in the traditional aspect. So we have the mammy archetype, and we have ancient mama pancakes, and we have skin lighteners and bleaching skin and blackface and all of these things, right? Like everything goes back to slavery. It just, you give me something and I can tell you how it has roots in slavery. Okay. I also talked about how, because of all of that, it was so significant when magazines like Essence, Ebony, and Jet were born because it was the first time that we, as Black people, as Black women, had control over the images that were being portrayed of us in the media. And in those comments, people were like, who are those magazines you listed? What's a Jet? What's a Ebony? And the girlies don't know. We're losing recipes, okay? Because they don't have Jet sitting next to the toilet while they're growing up, okay? They don't have Ebony at the auntie house on the coffee table to read when they're bored. And I think if there was a more concerted effort between Essence and Essence GU in their like overall marketing and branding strategy and their storytelling strategy to talk about that history, to talk about what it looked like for the only time you saw Black people in magazines was like for advertisements to bleach your skin, right? Or advertisements for ancient mama pancakes where you're looking like a mammy. And so when we see comments of, you know, the Black Gen X, Black millennial women complaining that these new girls are too raunchy, they're too ghetto, they look ratchet, blah, 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 blah. It's because their vision of Essence, what Essence means to them, is a space where we can be viewed in a respectable light. It's a space where we can, you know, not be a stereotype. The beautiful part of us doing the work in our generations of changing that narrative is that now this new generation, they don't necessarily know that. All they know is that there are spaces for Black women that exist. There are spaces for us to be ourselves. And so they have the luxury and the pleasure of doing that. And that includes doing so at Essence Fest. But I think there's an opportunity to kind of bridge that gap a little bit more. I also saw some discourse around like influencers and creators at these events and people being very upset, which I find that strange in 2024 because like creators aren't going anywhere. Influencers aren't going anywhere, but we can be more intentional about their presence. Like their presence alone is not advertising. Their presence alone is not promotion. But if we had a panel, we had different types of panels, right? Like we have a creator panel that has everybody from your Jackie Inas to your Monets bridging the gap and having conversations about the different challenges, the different obstacles, like the different intentions, the different reasons, the history, right? If we were having those conversations publicly and loudly, because they're happening, but they're also happening in spaces where people are seeking them out. Like I know that Jackie Ann talks about this all the time because I follow her all the time, right? And I know that she's won an NAACP award for her work, right? Most people probably don't know that. Most people probably don't know that creators can win an NAACP award. It would also be really cool to have a panel of like OG marketers who are in their 50s, 60s, 40s, and the new marketing girlies in their 20s and 30s who are also talking about the marketing space, one from a corporate behind the scenes level, but also from a like strategy level and the difference in how they're trying to portray each other, trying to portray Black women and Black culture and Black images, and like the onus that was put on Gen X, the onus that was put on millennials, and the onus that is put on Gen Z are all so different. So I think part of using these platforms like Essence Fest and these creator events should be to tell more of these stories, to connect more of these generations and like bridge the gap, have these conversations that really keep the recipes. We need to stop having these like, well, Gen Zs and the millennials. Can we just get past it and like talk to each other? There's so much power, there's so much beauty, there's so much value in intergenerational conversations on every scale, whether that be marketers, users, creators, audiences, readers. We just all need to be talking to each other more about history, about intention, about purpose, about why these spaces exist, why these spaces are valuable, why they're important. And we need to be putting them online for people to see who don't get to go, so that maybe they can better understand what's happening, because all they're also seeing is these snippets and these clips online, and then they're making an assumption, and then they're deciding not to go or that they want to go. And so I just think there's a lot of opportunity there to control that narrative a bit more, to bridge those gaps a bit more, to have more conversations, to tell more stories, to sell less ads. Yeah, and those are my thoughts. Those are my thoughts on Essence Fest. What are your thoughts? What do y'all think? Did y'all like it? Did you think it was cool? Did you think it was interesting? Did you think it was ratchet and ghetto? Or did you think it was a great time and you missed out? Personally, I would like to be at Essence Fest next year. It'd be great if I was hosting a panel between Jackiana and Monet McMichael at Essence Fest next year. But who knows? Who knows? A lot can happen in a year, okay?